All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Friday, so it's Wheel of Time. I was messing with my hair earlier, but I realized it's Matt Day, so it's Hat Day,
Yes, it
and
is.
we're good. And it's actually also fitting because I was skimming through before we got on, and I just had to do a sexual misconduct module for the university that I'm in, because apparently that's why there was a hold on my account because I hadn't done the module yet. Uh,
Oh my gosh.
Tylin would be kicked out of school a long time ago. Uh, but yeah, we got lots of thoughts on that, and hopefully we don't get too derailed because it is kind of funny just how problematic this relationship is in a lot of ways, even for us not woke people. But
Yeah, hey, what
also,
was there a question on the quiz of what happens if you get accused of uh sexual assault and a year later it turns out that there are texts and videos of the girl saying it was all a frame up, and how do you get your life and reputation back? Was that part of the quiz?
no.
Okay. Just
Though
checking.
they had a whole section in the module of uh we're going to clarify what consent is, and then they gave the muddiest 5 minutes of video that I've ever seen, and it was yeah. Consent can change at any time, by the way. You can be
That's awkward.
yeah, right on the verge of the climax, and the person say, "Up, I'm done." That would suck.
Oops.
Yeah, but to the point of the story, it's an interesting relationship, and I do like we open up with Matt there in bed with his where he's the pretty, she's his dominatrix there, but he's focused on her skin and how smooth it is and how it's actually very nice. And what I want to know, if anybody else has any kind of psychology background in the audience, would you call this, as I'm on the borderline of doing, kind of a Stockholm syndrome here?
See, I thought that's what where you were going to be going. That's why I bit my tongue, because what I was about to say is this is just another way of demonstrating who Matt really is, because this isn't any different in my mind to him calling himself nine kinds of idiot while he jumps out of a hayloft to rescue a stranger. He's going to bitch and moan about how this or that is unfair and this or that sucks, but he's still going to do it.
Well,
Um,
even more direct interactions with Rand, where Rand asks him, "Hey, you need to do this thing for me,
mhm.
which is dangerous and not really well thought out, and all of these things." And Matt's answer, basically, if we paraphrase all his interactions with Matt since he manifested his memories and made it clear that he knows what he's doing, of Matt, you're crazy, or excuse me, Rand, you're crazy. I'm going to do it, but Rand, you're crazy. This is
Yeah.
why. I mean, I'm still going to do it, but at the same time, I don't like this, but I am still going to do it. That's
Mhm.
basically the relationship they've had in the last four books.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, um I think there is an element of as well, besides the fact he just plain enjoys it, physically and even to a degree emotionally, even though it's not, not what he would like. It's I'm supposed to be the one supposed to be doing the chasing. Remember, that was where he thought he was breaking it off, was next time I do the chasing, because that's how it's supposed to work. Um, but in the kind of the main scene that you're referencing, when Rand went to say change of plans, you're going to go get a Lane and help a Gawain. Uh, and he tried, and it was a great scene because it's from his point of view, and he tries for a while to talk him out of it. He attacks it with every objection he can think of, but then once he's sure that Rand is sure, it's like, well, crap, fine, let's smoke a pipe and play some stones or something, because I don't want to talk about this anymore. And then when Rand, when he's leaving, kind of goes back to the point that Matt was already done with, he kind of in a what I see as an exasperated way says, "I said I'd do it, didn't I?
Mhm.
You know, it's why are we back to this? I already said I'd do it, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna keep bitching about it, even if it's just internal, but I'm gonna do it." And then when he gets to Saladar, it's Egwene suspects that she can manipulate him because I think he promised Rand, and Elaine doesn't see what the big deal is, and Nynaeve goes, "Oh, okay." Because that's how he is. He made a promise. He is going to do it no matter the cost to himself.
Yeah. And then we get to the current relationship where Jordan writes it in a way, especially since we do get Matt's perspective from inside his mind, not just from the things he says, that, okay, I am kind of into this, even though it's so wrong in so many
Mm-hmm.
ways. But at the same time, what we don't get is the fact that it's very clear, but we don't actually have an example of it because Matt keeps agreeing to things of what would happen if he actually did just leave, or what would happen if he actually did just say no.
Well,
And it
and it,
looked, and at that point, the little tidbits we get is very abusive, and
well,
she's got a lot of power in this dynamic.
no, she does, but um, he would just leave. I think the reason here of where it seems complicated because it is complicated as I kind of think this through and think out loud here is the reason you can go around in circles when you talk about uh, Matt and Tylin is that Jordan made it complicated. It is a complicated relationship on purpose. You know, there are a lot of, you know, the kind of cute, sweet elements, but then there are some really creepy elements, and then there's some is what's going on what I think is going on, or what's really going on here. And because there are moments where Matt does put his foot down and he's like, okay, no, even physically, we've seen him, snatch a weapon away from someone's hand or even out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's freaking, Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. He's that awesome. So but he can't just put his foot down physically and say, you know what, I'm done, because he also cares about her, and that would be the harsher, crueler way of breaking up. He basically he's in the position where he wants to break up, but he doesn't want to hurt her because he does actually care about her. And I don't want to go too much into it because I don't know if we'll actually make it through the end of the book or not, but something happens here at the end that is going to haunt him for the next two books
Mm-hmm.
because of that. And you actually see how much he cared about her, and how much he didn't want her to come to harm.
Which is funny because this is actually a little bit of a feminine trait, because what is, we've talked about this ad nauseum in so many different forms of this podcast. What is his solution to not wanting to hurt her is to ghost her.
Mm,
He's trying to get away in the chapters we're in now while
yes.
she's gone, because he can't say I'm just going to
And
leave.
and part of that is logical, but part of it may be rationalizing because you
Yeah.
you add on top of everything else that was already going on the the political problem, the political uh conundrum of, okay, well, now I've got the Sanchin to think about too.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't be too disruptive because she's not just, the overbearing cougar lover. She's also the freaking queen.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't do anything that would reflect badly on her and
Which
lead
is
her
funny
to
because
harm that way.
I would love to see, wouldn't have mind seeing Jordan kind of flesh out something here where Dava was it Davakal, the basically the property of
Yeah, yeah.
the blood. He does go into that it's kind of looked down upon for the blood to take advantage of them, but also that it's pretty regular.
Hmm.
And Tuan, in her interactions with Tylin, Tylin, excuse me, and her interactions with Matt, he's not a Davakal. He's not property, but everybody treats him like he is. And if we had had a moment where he's like, she doesn't own me, and to see what the Shanshan would say about that at that point,
Well,
because it's a mixing of laws, because he technically is
I
not property, but could he be made property on a whim?
well remember when he first meets Tawan, she offers to buy him, and there is a moment of confusion when Tylin says he's a free man. He's not mine to sell. But I feel like, and it may be something that happens in one of the later books, or I may have missed something. So Scott, chime in if this also jogs your memory. That I feel like there was a scene or a comment from one of Matt's points of view that his his position as Tylen's toy was confusing because the Sanshin are so regimented. You either are or you aren't, and this he kind of is, but he isn't. Dakoval is weird to them.
Well, and not only that, you're thinking of Tuon as well, because she's trying to ration this out. Because
Yes.
if he's not property as her pretty, then he wanted to be there. And if he
Hmm.
wanted to be there, did he love her? Because I have these feelings for him. And so she's trying to reason out, well, should I pursue this?
Yeah. Um, because she does find him fascinating, and I think it's and we'll get into this a lot more in the next couple of books. When Matt and Tawan spend so much time together, which are some of my favorite scenes. Um,
Yes, some of my favorite scenes in yet another slog, though, because I think the process
mm,
there are so many things in these next few books, including what's happening already with Perrin, and starting with Elaine, that
yeah,
were good concepts and have great things about them, but they took too long to
I
develop.
I disagree, but as you say that, and I think about it, might be because the next book, Crossroads of Twilight, is one of my least favorite, and that may be why I think so highly of the Matt parts in that book because
They're the
they
highlights.
are they are far and away the highlights of that book. So I'll have to think about it in that light when we start going through it next. All right, so let's get into the actual. We're on chapter 28, which is 620 in the paper rack here, and uh it does start with them post coitus, and as you know, right here at the very beginning, her belt knife was stuck in the carved bedpost. So not not really being subtle anymore. She has long ago given up on being subtle, and you get some of that with his interactions with the staff, that they're
Mhm.
kind of in on it as well, and they have been, and in the next couple of chapters that starts to escalate because it starts to become clear that, oh, he's leaving, and the staff start to get annoyed because they look at him as the thing that is keeping Tylin uh most grounded and most a whole, you know, keeping from losing her what I think is her kind of innate natural compassion. She knows she has to be hard in certain areas because she is a leader and because she's a weak leader with a lot of people trying to take her down. Um, but she's also a good person, and you start to see in these chapters a reinforcing of something we've kind of talked, Jordan has talked about a little bit, but now it's becoming more prominent because there's so much political pressure going on that the staff is of the mind of, where the hell do you think you're going? You're the only thing keeping Mama Bear from being a bear with a sore tooth.
Which is funny because you wanted me to get sexy time with Sam here, and this is actually probably the best spot for it, because this is something that is taboo to talk about, but it is actually, if you really parse it down to its little pieces and parts, sexual aggression is a buffer from violence. It actually gets those same juices out of your system.
Who were we listening to? This was months back, a couple of times ago that I was down there, and I thought this was really creepy and interesting that there have been rat studies where you stimulate a part of the brain and they screw like
Andrew
crazy.
Huberman,
You keep stimulating that same part,
and they become murderous
they become
assholes.
murderous
Yeah,
psychopaths that
yeah.
just murder and kill everything. They
Hmm.
just start going nuts, in that direction. And I thought that was really interesting, but also really creepy, especially when you talk about where certain kinds of and this is what he was talking about. This is what he was leading to was where certain kind of fetishes and aberrant sexual behaviors come from, and then where that can go, over the edge. And also, I think I don't remember if he talked about this, but in my mind, it also ties to why so many really creepy serial killers have a sexual component to their methodology and their motivation.
Yeah, and that's a difficult one because a lot of times again, everybody shits on Freud, but I think if you take some things out of the details, you get a clearer picture of what he actually had
Yeah.
insight on.
You
And so many of these serial killers did, especially since they're male, had an influence with something with their mother that was really off.
mhm.
Kemper comes to mind, where his mother was very abusive and she was a nurse, and she was just a hateful, spiteful human being.
Yeah.
And he basically tried to find her and kill her all the time. Is what is how he picked his victims.
Yeah, I seem to recall that several of the more infamous US serial killers there had mothers that were prostitutes, as well, that was also that was a major impact on their outlook and how they viewed and treated women. But getting back to it, I like the kind of the parting here of so 621. I'll be gone a little more than a week, sweetling. Shall I tie you to the bed so I'll know you will be safe till I return? Returning her wicked smile with his most
Foreshadowing,
winning,
by the way.
yes, with his most winning grin took a bit of effort. He was fairly sure she was joking, but only fairly. I I also think this is where the I mean, for lack of a better word, Tylin haters in the forums, that this is where I thought they were wrong, is that um she's not abusive necessarily. It's that I think uh I think Matt enjoys the game because of the risk. In the same way that he starts to, at first, he's repulsed by these memories, this part of him that is this ancient warrior, right? That he gets from all these memories. But then he starts to kind of get into it because battle is the ultimate game because it has the highest stakes. I think his relationship with Tylin is a reflection and an element of that. It's influenced by that. Is that one of the reasons besides the bitching and moaning that he sticks around? Well, one of the reasons besides the all right is the fact that there's a bit of a thrill here, not knowing exactly where he stands and not knowing exactly where she stands and how serious are some of these joking threats? How much joke, how much seriousness are there in the way that she acts? And I think to him, there's a bit of a thrill there because it is an adventure.
Yeah, I think I need to define again, since we're trying to draw in as many people as we can that are fans of the books or just reading it for the first time. Stockholm syndrome is basically the phenomenon that the captor will start having fond feelings for their or excuse me, the captive will have start having fond feelings for the captor. And that's kind of along the lines of the elephant and the rider. They've lost control of the elephant, so they start post hoc justifying their
And it
place in this situation. And it's I wonder how much of that is going on here, because in the beginning we didn't have the, oh, her skin is perfect. We had the, well, okay, that wasn't horrible, but it still was wrong. And now it's becoming more and more and more, which is actually more and more reason why he needs to get out of there now. while she's gone, and while her influence, her charisma, her presence isn't in his mind.
Yeah. Um,
Which is exactly how the Domine and Soldem relationship works.
that's a good point.
We get that
I had
with one of the Domine right here.
I had not thought of that
I
before.
didn't until that exact moment.
And and consider um this is interesting because what is what is something that Matt is known for and is going to come up here in the next couple of books actually of that he's very proud of and he learned from his father who wasn't an alcoholic, you dumbasses. He knows horses.
Mm-hmm.
He knows horse trading and horse training. Well, what you've talked about the elephant and the rider, there's an element of that with horses too, because they're big and powerful animals. All right. They're the ones in charge. And if you've ever been on a horse that decides that it's going to go that way and you don't want to go that way, you're holding on. That's you're just holding on. Okay, because I've been out before with riding and um luckily uh my son at the time was really young at the time was riding with my dad who was on the younger horse who was easier to control because he was more malleable. I was on the older horse who was also way bigger. Uh, and some calves had gotten out of the pen. And these are cutting horses, these are quarter horses. And so its instincts kicked in like a dog that saw something and is like, oh, there are calves out. I'm going to go herd them back in. And he took off. And there was nothing I could do except hold on because he was going after those calves. And that was that. Um, and there's an element of that with there's a parallel there that because when he finds out Tuan trains Soldam, he finds it out here in this book and it becomes more relevant later is or she trains Domine, she's a Soldam that that kind of creeps him out, but I hadn't thought before there's an element of similarity there. I think that's one of the reasons they are able to bond because they have that same kind of mentality even though they see it completely differently.
Yeah, one of my many jobs I had illegally because I was too young to work was when I lived in Colorado. I actually helped saddle break mules. So if you want to get on something that's not going where you want them to go, it's the first time they've ever had a saddle on them.
Mm-hmm.
You usually end up in the fence. Uh, and since I was the lightest one on the ranch, I was always the first to go. So it was an experience, and actually you can't get me on a horse right now. That's one of all the things that I will do that are brave. I'm going to try it. This is one of the things I'm determined to try again someday, but you cannot get me on a horse right now. It's a struggle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's those experiences at a young age because we had a pony. My stepfather thought it was always lovely to go smack it in the ass with a switch when one of us kids was on it because
Oh dear.
that was funny. And that coupled with the saddle breaking experience, and it's not a good experience for me.
All right. Then we get a lot of kind of exposition, but also kind of catching us up on what's been going on with Matt since we didn't see him last book because he's riding through the city, and so you get both again Jordan doing double duty of explaining to you what's going on with the Sanshin occupation of Ibu Dar, but then also kind of what's been going on with Matt and how he views what it because since he's been stuck here, you get his thoughts on all this. I like when Noel shows back up. Um, and then and they have an interesting interchange here of uh this is page 626. You are planning something, Lord Matt, and I would like to offer my services. I'm planning to take the weight off my leg, Matt said as casually as he could. Noel seemed harmless enough. He talks about how he's been telling the Red Arms these wild stories that don't seem like they could be true. And that's kind of your first clue on who he is he has these incredible stories from, all around the world, including the other side of the Aiel waste, who even the Aiel don't know a lot about what goes on over there. Um, da, 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 da. And then Noel says, "You don't trust me yet. That is understandable. Although, if I meant you any harm, all I had to do was stand back that night in the alley. You have the look in your eye. I've seen great men laying plans, and villains dark as the pit of doom, too. There's a look a man gets, laying dangerous plans he doesn't want known." "My eyes are just tired," Matt laughed, leaning on his staff. "Great men laying plans? The old fellow had probably seen them in Shibuya with the giants." Um, blah blah blah, and then the conversation kind of shifts with Noel asking, "Does the golem drink blood?" Um, he, Light, he wished he had not mentioned that name where the old man could hear. He wished Birgit had never told him about the thing. "Why do you ask?" "Golem lived on blood. They ate nothing else." "Oh, good. So now we're getting extra creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Well,
the
the Gollum lore, and this is something that Jordan does well, is he mixes lore.
mhm.
And so we get a golem, which is a construct in a lot of legend, kind of indestructible construct that is used for these tasks. But also he kind of slightly mixes it with a little bit of vampire lore,
Yes.
who are also indestructible constructs to some degree.
Mhm.
So it's a mixing and matching that I think worked really well with this villain that I think was almost a little OP for the whole universe here, but so they went a little bit Marvel, but it's still I think a very nostalgic mix of
Mhm.
lore.
Yeah, and I mean he's done that before, and I've talked about this when ranting about the show. Is one of the like the way he describes Shinar, and that they are primarily heavy cavalry, and the way their society is, to me, it was a blend of the late Middle Ages Germanic princes and samurai Japan.
Well,
And he
we
took
look
those
at
two things and he smushed them together.
you look at Tyr because we got Jylin in the next scene here.
Mm,
It's very every all the names are Spanish.
mhm.
It's very Barcelona kind of esque as you go, but also like southern China
Yeah.
with the rice paddies and the way the fishing uh system is laid out, the
A-
bamboo staves, the everything,
and also how rigid
the conical
and
hat.
and
You know?
and how wide the divide is between the elite and the peasants. That is also something very much of, and you'll see that if you watch, old cool kung fu movies, where one of the reasons they use weird weapons is because the you if you had a sword, you were an outlaw,
Yeah.
So that's why they use, you know, implements that could be non-lethal, or implements that were doubled as farm implements and things like that.
Yeah, like the nunchucks, nunchaku were they were a variation of something used for thrashing
Yeah.
the rice to actually release the grains from the and the kama was basically a modified scythe,
Hmm.
hand scythe. So I mean, it was the thing about ninja is I hate some of the modern interpretations because they have the swords, and it's like no, they didn't do that. They had things you couldn't see or looked like farm implements.
Yes, and they weren't invisible because they had magical powers. They were invisible because they blended in
Mm-hmm.
with the people. They looked like everyone else. Um, all right, so what was let's move along here.
Well,
Um,
this is like maybe the last interesting Jylin scene
yeah,
because he becomes a simp after this. But Matt and him bantering there when he wants him to steal the clothing and
I
stuff. He's
love
like,
that.
I am a thief catcher, not a thief. And Matt's
Yeah.
like, close enough.
Yes, and to him, no, no, no. This is a very hard and firm line of, I'm on this side, the bad guys are on that side. How dare you, sir?
Yeah, but then Matt knows him well enough to be like, well, you've got this person you're really, really interested in and have taken a lot of risks for because you've been beat up a lot here recently over it.
Hmm.
This is our only chance to help whoever the heck that is.
Right.
And
Um,
Matt being Matt, he's saying it offhand, but he sticks with it
mhm.
because, Jylen's one of his people. Oh, and then we get to Tuan, huh?
Yeah, and then there's some amusing Tawan interactions here. Um, but I think that I'm on page 630 here after that conversation when we start to get some kind of summary of what's going on in the days to follow. Um, that I think this is just further confirmation about how part of Matt's problem here is that as much as the relationship he is in is atypical, especially in general, but especially from where he comes from and his worldview, it, it, he's still kind of stuck with it because he does actually care what happens to Tylin, and so you see him uh at the bottom of this. Matt tried to encourage the belief. When he went and two Domine vanished at the same time, the events were sure to be linked. But with Tylin gone and his intention to run away plain before she returned, she would be safe from blame. So that's just adding to what I was talking about earlier. Is you he was already in a bit of a pickle because as I said, he was at that point where okay, he wanted to break up, but he still had a lot of connection to this person, so he was trying to figure out how to break up in the least painful way possible. Oh crap! And now you have this external thing added on top of it of the Sanchin invasion and all the crap going on here, and so he has to make sure that when he does this, that it's not connected back to her. Um, and on top of that, he's got to worry about Beslin too,
Yeah, that's I
because
was just skimming through real quick.
not only does he care about him and not want him to end up with his head on a pike, but he knows that you go too far, it doesn't even matter if they have a direct connection of evidence. That's not how the Sanchin work. They connect you to any kind of uprising, and they're just your mom's going to become part of it. Period.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only that, he makes a great point that everybody's going to suffer
Yeah.
because the Shanshan are actually very benevolent dictators unless you walk out of line. And then they're very, 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 very harsh, which is something that I struggle with because I'm a very, as a more libertarian kind of leaning person, I believe less laws are better. But also with that belief comes a part of you that says, but when you break the little bit of law that we have,
Mm-hmm.
you should be judged harshly because we've given you the wiggle room.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else is being selfish. And I think that's where Matt's kind of in the middle here. He's like, he knows there are conquered people and that sucks. But at the same time, it could be worse.
Well, you get a hint of that with what little we know about Arthur Hawkwing, which is, you know, yes, 1,000 years removed and a lot has changed, but they come from this. They come from that place. That is their origin. Is one of Hawkwing's sons, and it was talked about. I mean, his sword was named Justice, and the people loved him. And I think you get a glimpse of that is because if you're one of the normal folk, you're just going about your life, and what really leads to a harsh punishment is if you challenge the authority. That's what they care about. They don't really care about what you're doing in your daily life. They care if you challenge the authority.
Which sucks because the Beslan that I kind of sympathize with is something that I have inside. I'm very just anti-authoritarian. So even if
Yes,
it's a benevolent dictator, I'm like, it's a dictator.
exactly. And so on 635, this is Beslin talking. She says we are mice, Beslin said bitterly. When wolfhounds pass by, mice like quiet or get eaten, he quoted. I don't like being a mouse, Matt. Matt breathed a little more easily. Better a live mouse than a dead one, Beslin, which might not have been the most diplomatic way to put it. Beslin grimaced at him, but it was true. Well, yeah, it's true, but as we have seen and will see plenty of times, Matt's more Beslin than than he wants to admit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the difference there is he's the one jumping out of the hayloft, right? He's not worried about anyone else. being caught up in what he's doing. Now, eventually, he accepts that that's just not reality, especially for someone who's in a leadership position. There, people are going to get hurt because of your decisions, but he's trying to calculate it as best he can so that only he will have to face the repercussions for what he does.
Well, a lesson Matt learns going forward as a leader is something you brought up in our bitching about the episodes last time with Gaul.
Mm.
Matt finally learns that sometimes the best action is to jump straight in and control the action. Because you brought it up with Gaul, to for those that don't watch those other episodes. In the show, a bunch of white cloaks surround Avienda and Perrin, and he says, "Come in all at once," but they come in one at a time because it's a show and they need action scenes. Whereas in the books, they gave the same order, but Gaul rushes them
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't allow them to be able to do that. And that's the difference. He rushed in, which seemed like a rash thing with armed opponents, but it was to keep them from controlling the whole situation. And Matt kind of learns that as he goes, that with his armies and with it, like he jumped out of a hayloft instinctually. But when he has his armies, he was a little more careful until he kind of realizes sometimes you take the initiative.
That is something I hadn't really thought of necessarily consciously and put words to. Is in the next book, Matt's in a really low place because things are going to go to shit here at the end of this book. Um, and it seems kind of crappy of, why did you do Matt dirty this way? But no, it's because Matt had to learn that there is no perfect plan. And he's said as much before, but he hasn't felt it. I mean, he has basically quoted to his underlings before the maxim of no plan survives first contact. Okay, so he knows that from these memories, but he hasn't felt it personally, and now he's about to feel it because this plan is going to go to shit and bad things are going to happen
Or
and
as we
people
used
are
to
going to
say in
get
the
hurt.
old days of MMA, everybody's got a great game plan to get punched in the face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So make the best plan you can, but don't be rigidly married to that plan and don't expect because I've taken all this time to plan, now things are going to be great. No, things are still bad, things will still happen.
I've got a great example of that from my Germany trip because my wife's the planner and I'm the deal with everything that comes along person. Uh, we had our flight from here to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to Nuremberg, and then the whole afternoon after that, which was supposed to be decent weather, and we were going to go from Nuremberg to Rottenburg, which is not very far, and do that to stay awake and then try to get acclimated. The the rain we haven't had all summer came in all in one 30-minute burst while we were in Houston International Airport, and the rain wasn't going sideways, it was going this way. It was so windy and everything, so they grounded everything. And so our flight was delayed, which means we didn't catch our connecting flight in Nuremberg, so they rescheduled us for
Oof.
the next Nuremberg flight, which was 7 hours later. And so we didn't meet that flight. I mean, we didn't make our Rotenberg trip, right? But there was a silver lining to this. Everybody was grumpy and tired after the Frankfurt flight because we just went back in time or forward in time through the night without having a
Yeah.
night. And you can't sleep on a plane unless you're just a psychopath, I think. So
My wife, yeah.
yeah, well, she's also tiny, so that helps.
She can
Becca
literally
Becca
put
slept
her feet on the seat.
Yeah,
Yes.
Becca slept very well next to me because she's a little bitty tiny girl and she uses me for a pillow. But
Mm,
it's
yeah.
uh we got there and we had the 7 hour delay and everybody's bitching and moaning because the plan's not working out. And I'm like, there's a row of chairs not taken. And I had a nice 2 hour nap in that airport. And then we got there, we had a nice cheese and bread dinner like we do in the evening there, which is one of my favorite things. And then we slept partially through the night because we're not acclimated. And then we had the rest of the week, and we ended up in Rothenburg 3 days later, and we had the whole day. We were acclimated, we were rested, and that's one of my favorite places to go there. So it's like, this was nice, but you had to, the point of this story is you had to relax from the plan.
Hmm.
Okay, this is what life gave us. Let me just make the best of it. Okay, I'm going to eat a little bit. I'm going to have a little nap. And then we're going to make our trip. And then I'm going to eat a little bit. And then I'm going to try to sleep. Maybe have a couple nice German beers in the process. And then we'll just reschedule that. And it worked out perfectly. And it's like, yeah, just relax. The plan didn't work, but there's plenty of time for a new plan. And Matt is that kind of person. He stresses internally over it.
Yeah. Speaking of plans, uh, poor poor Tom is losing Rozelle's magnificent bosom, um, because she has captured Banner General Lord Yamada, who she makes sing, which is amusing. Um, I
Which is funny because in the beginning Tom is supposed to be kind of like a role model for Rand, but I think the pairing with Tom and Matt is actually the perfect
yes,
one.
yes, yeah, yeah, especially at the time where they come back together. So it's perfect at first because Tom needs Matt
Mm-hmm.
when he's in Tar Valon and he's at his lowest point. Tom needs Matt to pull him out of his funk. Then they separate because Tom goes off with the girls, and when they come back in Saladar, Matt needs Tom because he needs that uh uh world weary wisdom to help temper his youthful exuberance. Uh anyway, and then the golem, it continues to be a problem. And then we get to chapter 29. Uh and and Matt goes to the wandering woman because he's got to start working on his plan. Um
We get Jolene.
yes.
I heard a hard rock version of that song today, and it was actually really good.
That sounds odd.
Well, there's a channel on Spotify that it's one of the favorites of a pair of clients of mine that come in together, and it's hard rock. Hard rock does everything. It's basically hard rock remakes of everything,
Wow.
and it's like 60 hours long. So every time we play it, we tend to get something new, and one of them was a remake of Jolene. It was and it was actually quite good.
Well, I like the last paragraph of the chapter before we get into why he's at the Wandering Woman. Is Amede Jolin brought him the only really good news he'd heard in an age. It was not news exactly. It was a cloth sack containing two dresses wrapped around the silver length of an Adam, which isn't silver anymore and isn't the length because whatever, just whatever. It just every time they do that, they have to spend VFX money that they're not spending on weaves or other sorts of special effects that look like shit or just aren't there, as we ranted about last time.
Well, and this is something I didn't say in the last one, but what is seemingly clear is the way they talk about the Soul Dam and the Domine and the way they visualize it is actually the Soul Dam is sucking the power from them and then using it.
I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah,
That does,
when you mentioned the
yeah,
sperm
yeah,
going from one to the other,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and then but Suroth's speech about not being given this power, but being educated and earning the right to use it. And then every time they use it, those little spermy things suck from one to the other, and then the soul dam does something with the hand signals, and it works.
Whereas what it's described as from a I think it's Egwene who figures this out because it's from her point of view that you first figure out the Adam, or maybe later. I can't remember that it's basically described by the people who know how the power works as a warped and twisted link. It's creating a bastardized link between
Mm-hmm.
the Soldam and the Domine so that the Soldam can direct the flows. But it's a link in a way that's not supposed to work. Because you're not supposed to be able to pull someone into a link involuntarily, and that's what the
Mm-hmm.
Adam is.
Well, and even still, Egwene controlled her channeling for the most part because otherwise your affinities wouldn't matter. And this is where we first get the exposure that she has an affinity for metals and earth, which is rare among female channelers.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So, page 643. My favorite part about this scene is that we have seen that Satalanan is more than she seems, and now you get a big fat hint of where she might have come from. You might not necessarily know who she is if you haven't been paying attention to some esoteric details. So I'll just leave it at that for now. I mean, maybe we can go into that later because I don't think he ever explicitly says who she is. But
No, I'm pretty sure this falls into the categories of not everything's fully explained, but
mhm,
yeah.
yeah, so she plants her hands on her hips and tells Jolene what for. Of um If you will not listen to him, Jolene Maza, you will listen to me. I mean to see you back in the White Tower if I have to walk every step of the way pushing you. Perhaps along the way you will show me that you know what it means to be Aes Sedai. I'd settle for a glimpse of a grown woman. So far, all I have seen is a novice sniveling in her bed and throwing tantrums.
Which is a tough situation. And yeah, you need that person to set you in place. But for Jolene, she's obvious. She's a new Aes Sedai. She's not even ageless. This is why
Mm-hmm.
she's able
Mm-hmm.
to blend in. But also, I mean, this is if you are even an Aes Sedai, this is the worst place you could be on the face of the earth other than the pit of doom.
Mm-hmm.
It may be even more because the pit of doom would probably just kill you.
Yeah. I do find it interesting that Jolene is probably the most flagrant example, but and again, this is from other people's points of view, and we don't really ever see a real green from her point of view necessarily. Elaine chooses the green, but she's definitely more of an outside. Well, no, even that still works. Isn't it interesting that so often when someone is thinking about or talking about the Ajaz, the greens tend to be the more emotional ones.
Okay, so I need to pause for a bathroom break and let me riff on this. Okay, so we've got a young woman, Jolene. Young by all standards, because she's again not even ageless yet. So she's newly raised to the Shaw. Uh, she's a green, which is the battle Aja, right? And I can't remember if it was one of these or one of the episodes, the wheel the Amazon episodes.
I suspect it was one of the Amazon episodes because there
We,
there
we
was
yeah
a
we
lot of bitching about how they turned the greens into sex fiends.
yeah. So, but what we do know from the books is they are more aligned with that than some of the others, right? Uh, but it makes sense. We just talked about earlier in this episode the connection between aggression and sexuality, right? Yeah, the exact same places you stimulate one, you get one, and you stimulate it more, you get the other, and how satisfying one can alleviate the other. So the green is the battle aja. So who's going to be attracted to the green is people who have that tendency, that higher propensity to want to take a physical action in a situation, which is also going to be severely highly correlated to a higher libido, which is going to be seriously highly correlated to a more I hate to use the word disagreeable here because then you would be agreeing to some things in certain circumstances, but a more volatile personality, I would say. So all these things do run in the same area. So it actually makes sense that the seductress would be more likely to get into a fight, which would be more likely to be a little bit more irrational.
That's a good point.
So all of these things actually play together, and this is Robert Jordan being the Arnold Schwarzenegger of sports science, because
Mhm.
you know the saying in physiology is that half of strength and conditioning science is just proving Arnold right. He
Well,
didn't know why he was right. He was just right. And
yeah.
Robert Jordan wrote these people without actually knowing the underlying things behind it, but he was a good observer of people.
Yep. Uh, Speaking of observer of people, I love Matt's response when Jolene, kind of helped by Satal a little bit, gets a little uppity about leaving sisters in the kennels, leaving sisters collared, and he says, "Believe me, I won't leave an Aes Sedai in the kennels unless she wants to stay, because there is at least one that wants to stay because she's that
Mm-hmm.
far gone." But he recognizes that I can't tell her that because she is way too uppity and self-sure, and she will not believe that. Teslin believes it because she's feeling it. She actually knows what it is to be collared. Um, Jolene doesn't, and so I like the way he deals with that. But then her warders still get obnoxious.
Yeah, well, back to Egwene though. There's a reason why Egwene wasn't fully broken, is because she is a green at heart, and Jolene would be one of those that has to suffer a lot to be fully broken. Whereas I think someone like a white sister would be pretty easy to break because all you have to do is convince them that it's hopeless, and then it becomes logical to comply.
Mm-hmm. Um, I do. Okay, so then when Satala Non, Matt's again fighting a hopeless battle because he didn't even realize this was a battle he was going to have to fight, that Satala's decided she's going with him because she's not going to stay in a place where women are collared like animals. And no, you can't talk me out of this because I've literally already sold the inn, which Matt doesn't appreciate because he's hiding his gold in her inn. Um, and she's already sent her husband and all of her family, her rather extensive family, off and away because this is no place for to stay. Um, so this is 646 down at the bottom. You let your kin go out in this season. Disbelief and scorn mingled in Jolene's voice. When the worst storms are brewing, because remember this is winter now, is winter's heart. So this is winter now, which is when the worst storms usually brew. Um, Her back to the Aes Sedai, Mistress Anon raised her head proudly, but it was not pride in herself, which I love that line. I trust Jasper to sail into the teeth of a Camaros, which if I remember correctly, that's their word for a typhoon, if need be. I trust him as much as you do your warders, Green. More. Frowning suddenly, Jolene picked up the lamp by the iron base and moved it to cast light on the innkeeper's face. Have we met somewhere before? Sometimes, when I cannot see your face, your voice sounds familiar. And then she cuts her off because no, Jordan's not going to give us any more hints yet about who Satalanon is. Um, and and this is interesting to me that for all that Matt has discovered, he still has blind spots because there are certain things he just doesn't know. Like it never occurred to him that only certain people can be Soldam.
Mm-hmm.
But because Satal, for some reason, hint, hint, because Satal knows how channeling works to some degree, she knows what to listen for. And when people say certain things, she'll understand the meaning that Matt wouldn't. It's like, it's like someone talking about a defensive scheme in football. And even if you haven't played professional, if you've played football, you'll go, okay, I know what they're talking about there. If you've never played the game, or and even if you haven't watched it that much, you'll just be utterly clueless as to what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Agrees that I think I've mentioned before. Kurt Warner has an awesome YouTube channel where he breaks down stuff on a very technical level, and it really gives you an insight as to why they have the Wonderlic test, among other things, because it's really
Not
hard to be,
anymore.
well, not anymore, but it's really hard to be a dummy and play at a high level in a sport that is so complicated.
Which is funny, not to tangent us too much, but they have this new test, and it's look at a screen, do these things, and reactionary tests, and it's supposed to be like an IQ test. And the guy the Texans drafted scored super low on it. That was the big knock on him. And that was, oh my gosh, why are you drafting him number two? And it might be why he wasn't drafted number one based on records and everything. And I looked into this test, and they're doing it as the next big thing. It's done on a video game console, and I'm just like, that's screwy. And then I looked more into it. It's all about focus. If you're good at video games, you're going to be good at this test.
Mm.
So what you're telling me is that our new quarterback isn't good at video games, but he's going to be on a field with 300-pound guys trying to bear down on him, watching his receivers and not having to look at that big guy and making sure he makes the right read and throw. That's broad vision. That's not
Yeah,
looking at a
yeah,
screen and doing something. The Wonderlic test had its problems, but it was basically an IQ test, was
yep.
what it was. This new one is a video game test. Every quarterback in the league is probably going to be better at Madden football than our quarterback. But when it comes to real football, well, we're only 4 games in, but he's breaking records that other quarterbacks such as Peyton Manning and Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers were the other people to be at the same level. Yeah, this is a horrible new test. And
Depending on which metrics you look at, you and I have IQs that are in the genius level. Incoming quarterbacks would probably be smarter than we are based on this test because we don't play those games.
well, most quarterbacks are going to be high IQ anyways. To get to that level as a quarterback, you're going to be a super high. I'd say that probably the low end on a quarterback in the NFL is probably 130.
I'm dubious about certain people. When I see that you can't string a sentence together, it makes me question your
Yeah, but
intelligence.
you don't usually see that with a quarterback.
Usually,
Usually.
but we
But
have seen it before.
but then there's also the cultural factor, which is there are certain demographics of quarterback that are being told you don't have to associate with these norms because that's assimilation.
Mhm.
But even the one that would spread that message that we've complained about in the past, who's made documentaries and kneeled down for national anthems, when he's not trying to act a certain way, he can be,
Begging to get back on the plantation.
yeah, he can actually articulate in the other way. So we're going to do a whole segment. I pitched this to Heath the other day about how IQ and critical thinking are not the same thing.
Mhm.
And to piggyback on that, how IQ can actually make you dumber because it's not the same thing as
If
critical
you
thinking.
don't, yeah, if you, it's like anything, if you don't understand the limitations of it, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and we got on this tangent because Satel and on knows channeling, and yeah.
Yeah. I like the reaction here
Oh, you said the words
with
Wonderlic test, and I just
yes.
went on my rant.
Yep.
We need to, I guess, do a whole episode on Wonderlic tests and the new tests and everything. But
Um, I like the way Jolene reacts, and of course, Matt doesn't know how the Adam works. We know because we saw it from Egwene's perspective, and then we saw a little bit more with
the GNN.
with the girls and Mulgideon,
Hmm.
and having made one and using it. And so we know how the Adam actually works. And so when Matt from the outside looking in is, why are the warders acting like this? Well, because of the way the Adam apparently fires off the pain receptors in your body to put you into weird kinds of pain. And it is, something we praised about the awful show was Egwene's captivity and how they condensed months of torture into 25 to 30 minutes of an episode, because she was most of that episode. And so I'd say 25-ish minutes of screen time, and they condensed all this into that. But this is where the book gives you so much more depth, is because you understand how creepily pervasive and invasive the Adam is and what it does to your body, as far as making you feel pain. I also like his Matt being Matt here. Of course, I have another plan. He didn't have another plan. I also like that he is able to read Satal. So again, another hint that Satal is much more than she seems, but that Matt is also no slouch. Is she can see through him, but he knows that she knows, which I think is kind of cool.
Hmm.
Uh oh yes, and then at 6:50, doobie doobie doo.
Yep.
So he doesn't have a plan, but the wheel weaves, and here you go. But he still has to
Let's
figure out.
bail dominant.
Let's bail dominant, baby.
Yeah.
But Matt still has to figure out how to make this work, and he has to navigate this very awkward situation because the gaps in his memory because of the dagger that started at Shadow Logoth, which is where he met Bale. So he's looking at this heavy set guy speaking in an Illianer accent, going, "Who the hell are you?" When he should really remember, because it was a very pivotal moment in his life, in his
Well, I
young
mean, we
life.
get it from Doman's life, who's been interesting up until this point, saying this was a pivotal moment in my life,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
remember who the hell you are.
for sure. You know me, Matt said cautiously. Fortune prick me, I do. You did take a memorable voyage on my ship once, with Trollocs and Shadowlogoth at one end, and a Verdral and Whitebridge in flames at the other end. Bail Doman, Master Cawthon, do you remember me now? I remember. He did, after a fashion. Most of that voyage was vague in his head, tattered by the holes those other men's memories had filled. Uh, we'll have to sit down sometime. The nice way of saying, okay, I gotta go now. There be no time like now, Doman laughed, swinging a thick arm around Matt's shoulders and turning him back toward the wandering woman. So, um, I really enjoy the. I don't have a ton to say about it except that I really enjoy the interaction between Matt and Ganon, because they are both very much. I'm starting to hate the term because it's so overused and abused, but they're both very much alpha personalities. Um, they both have uh, probably technically Ganon has more experience than Matt, but when you factor in the memories, Matt has more experience as a leader, not just a leader, but a leader in battle, which is a big effing deal. It's just adding. It's adding exponentially on top of the stress of leadership. And I love the way they spar, because each one of them wants to take control. As again, it says, you need one hand on the wheel. I think I've used this reference before in reference to it again, but I love the movie Master and Commander, as I'm a sucker for good historical movies, and it really nails the Age of Sail stuff, but also the whole reason the title Master and Commander is because just on a merchant ship, you had to have one voice that was the master and the commander. But now you quadruple that necessity when you put that on a warship. And so there's this great dynamic. I can't remember the character's name, but the guy who plays the ship's doctor, who's the close friend of Russell Crowe, who's the ship's captain, and the kind of conflict they have, because the doctor is obviously, he's kind of more of a humanitarian. He's also a naturalist. He's a big fan of Darwin, and so he's more in that mentality, where Russell Crowe is, this is a ship of war of Her Majesty's Navy, and or His Majesty's at the time, His Majesty's Navy, and it must be run with rigid discipline or people will die. Um, and so Matt, to a certain extent, he understands that, because the same thing holds true on land. But when you're not only potentially fighting an enemy, but also fighting nature who wants to kill you, and the sea especially, because it's so much harder to get away from nature when you're out on the sea. Uh, with Were you ever caught out in a storm when you couldn't see land?
Oh yeah.
When you were on a
I was
deckhand?
in the water caught out in a storm where we couldn't see land because a wave went over the boat and I was sitting on the ice chest on the back tying knots as I always was, and went floop right off with the ice chest and was holding on to it and all the chum around me while they were looking for me in the swells. Yeah, that was.
It is. So the one time for me is when I was with my dad and my uncles fishing off the coast of Louisiana, which is a phenomenal place to fish because there's so much structure there. And we were outside of land, and me and dad and Uncle John are fishing, and I kind of just glance over to the sonar and I say, "Whoa," because we had noticed some clouds off on the seaward side, and they were pretty dark, but we hadn't really thought anything of it. And I just look at the sonar and go, crap, because the top half of the sonar is all red. And it came on fast. And
Giggity.
yeah, exactly. So when my uncle noticed, he said, okay, reel them in. And we reeled them in as fast as we started hauling, and it caught us. And it was pretty terrifying, because this wasn't like, the first time I went out deep sea fishing was one of those big annoying party boats where they cram like 40 people onto a real big boat.
Yeah, you went on the
You know,
evil one.
yes, I went on the evil one because it was cheap. Um, but at least when there were swells there, you felt more secure because you're in a bigger boat. This wasn't that. And so when the swells are taller than the boat and you can't see anything around you, it is unnerving. And so you have to add that layer of, okay, so not only are you a leader, and then jump up real high, not only are you a leader in battle, but then jump up even higher. You're a leader in battle when you can't see land and Mother Nature is trying to kill you all. And so I love the interplay there of, no, I'm in charge. I'm the one hiring the crew here. My hand is on the tiller. But uh, besides Matt's just kind of personality and ego, I think he also understands. All right, yeah, but I understand your analogy, but we're not actually on a ship here. This is my playing field here, and you're kind of stepping into my realm. So I need to be the one in charge here.
Which gave him
Um,
his new plan, though, by the way.
yep, yep, yep,
Yep.
yep. The wheel weaves. You do be in the presence of Captain of the Green Lady again and Thamarath. This be Matt Cawthon.
Yep.
Probably felt good to not be called Lord Matt, but then on the other hand, he's kind of getting used to it.
Yeah. Uh, but then he makes an astute observation, and out of nowhere, the Seekers are after you. Oops.
Yeah, yeah. This is uh Matt being masterful. That this is Jordan really showing off here of, this is why he's one of, if in a lot of people's minds, the hero of this series, because he's really damn smart. So not only can he beat two of the best swordsmen in the world at the same time, because he's that good physically, but he just takes a seat and he looks between these two people, and he thinks while they're talking, and he goes, I know exactly what's going on here. And it's pretty uncanny, but again, kind of the reason we started this was to point out why this works, and the show and shows like it don't work is it doesn't come out of nowhere. This is pretty well established. It is entirely believable from what we have already seen that yeah, Matt can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a skill that is this is a tough one to understand if it's actually innate or learned or both. Probably both is the thing. Is innovativeness. So he beat the two swords masters. Was he a better fighter than them skill wise? No, but
And he was sick.
he's innovative.
Yeah.
He is an entrepreneur. He's a Elon Musk. He's a Nikolai Tesla. He's a Benjamin Franklin. Right? He is someone who invents new things. And listen to or read the way Jordan describes the sword forms, and it's very patterned. It's very this counters this and this counters this, and you have to know everything. But what happens when you come across someone who does everything new? There's no this counters this because there is no that. It's this new thing. But that doesn't mean you can't just go in willy-nilly and brawl. There's a skill set that goes with it. You have to be inventive, you have to be intuitive, and you have to be very good at reacting to things. And that's Matt.
There's a similarity there with wrestling that I don't think you got to experience because we were kind of winging it and figuring it out on our own. But um, if you're in a larger organization, you quickly learn that one of the funny things about wrestling is that what they call a fish, because you flop around like a fish if you don't know what the hell you're doing, can actually be really dangerous to beginner to moderate level wrestlers because you know enough to know what to do. But when this person who's just, you know, like someone who wrestled with his brothers, like you, and but doesn't actually know wrestling, just starts flailing around, and you're like, what the heck do I do with this? That person can actually be really dangerous and can end up upsetting someone with a moderate level of skill. But if you have a more advanced level of skill and you've seen that before and you know how to control someone, that fish is a fish. That's just
Mm-hmm.
you're a dead fish. You're a goner.
But you combine the two and you've got a very dangerous person. That's something that no, in high school wrestling where we were just kind of flailing around, I didn't get. But when I got to my mid to late 20s when I was doing MMA and I was really coming into it, that's the lesson I learned is I actually became a very dangerous opponent for a lot of people because I didn't have a set style or any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I was very reactionary in how I did. In fact, I got to the point where if I had the clinch or was grappling with somebody, I could know what they were doing by the way they were breathing, and I could feel their heart rate as we were going. And that's something that you can't you can get better at, but it's hard. I can't say it's something you can learn. It's something you kind of have to have a feeling for, and then you just get better with experience for it. And I
That's a
think that's where,
great
yeah, that's where Matt is. He has
that
this feeling for something, and now he's
yes,
getting the
yes.
experience that goes
That
along
is
with
a
it.
great segue into the climax of this scene here. Which is this is the bottom of page 643 to the top of page 654. And I won't read the whole thing, but Matt's chest felt tight. It was not a pain, but more like watching a horse he had bet on streak towards the finish line with others close behind and the question still in doubt. So, again, I love that I referenced Ahsoka and the character Thrawn in Star Wars before is the danger of having a very intelligent character because if you're not smart enough as a writer to pull it off, and Jordan is smart enough as a writer to pull off, let me show you how Matt is so clever, and you get his thought process going through here. And so he starts thinking through. He starts thinking through what they've been saying and what does that mean and what does that mean. And then very little was dangerous to one of the blood, except for other blood. And then out loud he says, "The Seekers are after you." the way her head came up was confirmation enough, and her hand went to her side as though reaching for a sword. Um, and so then he has to start thinking fast because maybe you should have said that out loud.
Yeah.
But saying it out loud was good because it puts them on the defensive. So now he's able to react of, all right, now I'm going to take the initiative here and I'm going to drive home the point. So as he said, so if you need to get away from the Seekers, I can help you. You'll have to go where the Sanchin aren't in control. Anywhere they are, the Seekers can find you, and it's best to go as soon as possible. You can always get more gold if the Seekers don't take you first. Tom tells me they're getting very active about something, heating the irons and getting the rack ready. Now it was for something entirely different. It was for the serial killer out there, the golem, but they don't need to know that. So again, this is Matt thinking on his feet and reacting quickly and taking advantage of the of his opponent, who's neither one of these people are Game of Houses people, right? Eganin, Doman, he has to be kind of slick because he's a smuggler. So, he's a bit of a talker. He's a merchant and a smuggler. So he's a bit of a talker. He knows how to talk, but he doesn't know how to think 4 moves ahead in the way that you need to play stones and to play the Game of Houses. And Eganin definitely isn't part of this world because she comes from, you don't get a ton of her background, but from my impression and from what I remember, they start you off young in the Sanchin military.
Mm-hmm.
And so her entire, not just adult, but young adult life has been a military structure. So
Yeah,
she's definitely off balance here.
For the freedom we talked about earlier in the Benevolent Dictator, we do get a kind of a CCP aspect from them where you're chosen for your job, and to each to their ability, right? That's the whole Communist Manifesto. Well, they'll figure out what your ability is and they're going to squeeze every bit of it out. That's what they don't tell you. And
Yes.
To the point of Aegean, and that she was selected for that because she showed an aptitude for it at a young age. And now they're going to squeeze every bit of that out of her, which they squeezed a little too much because she turns out to have aptitude that they didn't even identify.
That's a good point. After a moment that seemed to stretch hours, she nodded. He smiled to himself. His horse had crossed first. I love the imagery there that Jordan does, and of course he does it on purpose, and it's going to come back up here later. The horse trainer and trader imagery, that this isn't an accident. Yes, the wheel weaves. The wheel put Doman next to Matt so that Matt could come up, could get his backup plan, his plan B. Of course I have a plan B. You don't have a plan B. But the wheel put one in front of you, but you still had to be able to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
You still had to be able to, you still had to know that's the horse I bet on. And it mirrors where we started in Ibudar, which was, remember, kind of the first time we see Matt in Ibudar is at the horse races.
Well, I think this is one reason everybody loves Matt. He's kind of universally loved. Is we have a profession that has this exact same skill in real life, and we all love them. That's comedians. Comedians don't know if their jokes are going to land, but the really good ones are able to read the crowd and keep going. And so there's a lot of planning that's involved, but at the same time, not everything goes as planned. And I love listening to real comedians talk about the process and how they have to feel their way through it all the time, and then they just hone their skills as they go across. And Matt's like the ultimate comedy of this whole series.
Yep, that's a good point. All right, so then we get a break and it cuts to Matt talking to Tom and Julian about, all right, so you know these people, here's what's going on, and here's the new plan now. And now it's, all right, but can we trust these people and will they do what they said? And I really enjoyed the kind of back and forth here because we, the reader, know, but Matt, this is from his perspective, he has no idea what happened in Tanchico. And Julian is reluctant to say anything. And I like that Tom is circumstances alter cases, Julian. This is 657. And in any case, it wasn't an oath. Tom is more practical.
Yeah, that's why I
Uh,
said he's the better mentor for Matt because
mhm,
he's
mhm.
he'll adjust a little bit.
Yeah. Um, yeah, right. So let's see. Um, all right. So back to sexy time with Sam because page 659, about halfway down. So they're getting ready. Matt lets them know, all right, so here's the new plan, and it happens tomorrow night because we gotta go. That night, Matt chose to sleep in Tylin's bed, not for old time's sake. That thought made him laugh, though his laughter had too much of the sound of a whimper to be very funny. It was just that a good feather mattress and goose down pillows were preferable to a hayloft. I think this is Jordan in Matt's voice telling the reader Matt's lying to himself.
Mm-hmm.
Again, is this is just another layer in this very complicated relationship of he knows he has to go and he knows he has to go in this way to, in his mind, be the best way to protect her. But he doesn't
Well,
really like it because he's gonna miss her.
this is fun because one of the things I like about Jordan as a writer is when he's giving things from people's perspective, he actually has the internal self dialogue is different.
Mm-hmm.
Matt's the only one that talks to himself this way.
That's a good point.
He's the only one that
Regularly, there
and
are times where others will talk to themselves, but it's in a circumstance that warrants it. Matt does it. I'd never really thought about this until you pointed this out. This is Matt's modus operandi. This is just how his internal dialogue works.
it's not only how his internal dialogue works, it's very in tune with his page 654 to 655 in his external actions. Call me Matt, he said, giving her his very best smile. Even hard-faced women soften for his best smile. Well, she did not soften visibly. If anything, she frowned slightly. But one thing he did know is that women uh, uh, one thing he did know about women was the effect his smiles had. This internal dialogue is his internal smile to himself, and he's frowning back at himself.
Yeah. I like your thought about Matt as it's not just that he's the comic relief, it's that he has a comedian's personality, and the best comedians are self-deprecating.
Mm-hmm. But
So
they're
that's
also very in tune with the subject matter that they're talking about and the crowd that they're
and the
talking to.
crowd, yes. That
And
if
again,
you
back to why Tom is great here because Tom is an entertainer.
that is it, if you can ever find there's some great shows and videos out there of comedians sitting around talking to each other about being comedians and about why working a crowd matters, why you have to test your material because you have to get that feedback. It was one of the really sad um I think Netflix did this. They got a bunch of Norm Macdonald's friends to sit down and watch the last special he did, but he knew he didn't have time to do a real special. He was too sick and he was going to die any minute. So he just recorded it on his own. And like I don't remember if it was Letterman or Conan of who it was who said this, that it was really bittersweet because it was nice to watch Norm and it was nice to watch him working because they all respected him as a professional, but it wasn't right because Norm, one of the reasons other comedians respected him professionally, and for lay people, I think the best example of this is the way he would work the crowd in the Weekend Update when he
Mm-hmm.
would have a joke that would kind of but then he would like just kind of let it hang there, and he would just kind of work the crowd with his facial expressions, and then the crowd would start laughing. And so that is why he was so respected by other professionals, was because of his ability to work a crowd. And so to them it was bittersweet of, we just had this memorial service for our friend Norm, and so it's great to see his last bit of work, but it's not really his work, because his work was working a crowd. And that's what you see from Matt from the very beginning, is his ability to work a crowd.
Yeah, but if you look at it from that perspective, and if these same people can watch their own reaction video to his work, he probably was working them
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
via video. That's the part we get from the outside looking in, is if you're in a crowd watching a comedian, you're also observing the rest of the crowd.
Um, all right, so moving along here to at least try and get through Matt here in the
I'm
cold
confused
feathering
why that was
house.
supposed to be sexy time with me, though. We got his internal dialogue, and that was not sexy time, but
No, but you get a lot of his connection and his relationship with Tylin. And you get some more elements of things here, like on page 663. I find this amusing. Of uh Oliver was not upset over leaving Roselle, as Matt had feared he would be. He brought the subject up while he was helping the boy bundle his belongings to be carried over to the inn. All of Oliver's things were laid out neatly on the narrow bed in what had been the sulking room, a small sitting room when the apartment had been Matt's. She's getting married, Matt, Oliver said patiently, as though explaining to someone who didn't see the obvious. Popping open a narrow little carved box Roselle had given him, just long enough to make sure his Red Hawk's feather was safe. He snapped it shut and tucked it into the leather scrip he would be carrying on his shoulder. He was as careful of the feather as he had been of the purse holding 20 gold crowns and a fistful of silver. I don't think her husband would like her to keep teaching me to read. I would not if I were her husband. Oh, Matt said. Uh, Roselle had worked quickly once her mind was what once she made up her mind. Her marriage to Banner General Yamada had been announced publicly yesterday and was taking place tomorrow. I enjoy the kind of world weariness of this 10 to 12-year-old boy who's, as he thinks, explaining how the world works to Matt. And of course, Matt is thinking in Matt terms of, she's got a nice rack. I don't want to leave that.
well, he's also talking about Yamada. He said Yamada
Yeah.
might be a good general. He did not know, but he had never stood a chance against Brazil and that marvelous bosom.
Yes. I think when I first read these, I was envisioning Baywatch era Pamela Anderson. Uh, but now I feel Kate Upton would be a better Roselle.
Well, Kate Upton's already Grindel, so
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah, we've already established that. Okay,
yeah.
moving along.
I'm sure we
Uh,
could get on Instagram and find plenty of Roselles.
mhm,
She's not supposed to be like the smartest person, anyways. So
that's a good
we
point.
just tell them be yourself, and it would
Yep,
be perfect acting.
yep. All right. So,
That probably could get me expelled from school, according to this last module.
um, all right. So, what's the next thing that jumps out at you that you want to talk about as we try and, because I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. We should get through Matt and then call it here. Um,
Yeah, it's just a lot of details about the heist coming up.
yeah,
Of course, Vannon's got to get involved at some point, which again Sanderson does him dirty, but that's a spoiler.
yeah, yeah. But he's great here. Um,
Oh, then
uh,
Tylin comes back. That's important.
yeah. So yeah, that is what I was trying to get up to.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because they came back early for some reason. Oh, because of the
well,
things Egwene is doing.
but before that, when a Ganon shows up here, and this is just kind of reinforcing what I was referencing earlier about, one hand on the tiller, is this is 671, the very end of Cold Fat Raindrops, chapter 30 of um I enjoy the first words out of her mouth. Your man Vannon is rude. That's what she's concerned about. And then she goes into um basically, this isn't what I was expecting. Um uh but luckily I know how to adapt. Plans always need adapting once the anchor is dry. I I, I think this is kind of reinforcing my newish thought on part of the point of what's happening here, is that because Matt gets not just personally annoyed of, what do you mean you adapted the plan? And I think you can read into there, what do you mean you adapted my plan?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Ganon's right that, all right, this isn't what I was expecting. You didn't fill me in on all the details, and now I've got to make this work because I'm the one, for all that Matt is the better leader, she's the one that knows how the Sanshin actually work.
Yeah, but you also paralleled her and Matt a little bit in
Uh,
their abilities, and this is a very shining moment in that, because she did have to adapt.
mhm.
She is intuitive and inventive as well, and it's also no surprise that she's the one rebelling right now. She's a stick in the mud in a lot of ways, but she's the one going against everything she was raised to be.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that is a parallel to Matt, because she has to adapt the plan of her entire life right now.
Yes. Yes.
And she's been for the last few books, but slowly in increments. Anybody else, not anybody, most people in her position would have turned Bethaman in.
But she had enough intellectual honesty as well as intellectual curiosity to say, what the hell is going on here? And if this is wrong, what else is wrong that I always thought was right? That's why she's such a great small character, because Jordan always has that kind of depth, even in these smaller characters. All right, so chapter 31. I don't know about you, but I had a little fanboy moment the first time I read what the Aelfin said, is because ooh, this is going to be big.
I always get, which one's the Aelfin? They're the promises, or they the
The
hangman?
first ones.
The first ones. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
this is the daughter of 9 moons. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so this is, oh, we're finally, this is going to be big, and it's going to be something based on that first trip through the door and all of those mysteries and that we've been wondering about for, what is this, book 9, and that was book 4, the very beginning of book 4. Um uh and then Matt has to run off upstairs because he's a sucker. And but I it we'll put a pin in this and get more into it next time when you see the results of this. But part of him had to know that this wouldn't end well, but he couldn't not do it,
Mm-hmm.
which was to sneak into this Windfinder's room and let her loose, even though this isn't part of the plan. And he tells her, and he says, look, I'm going to release you, but I want your word that you will wait a certain amount of time before you do anything. Um, and I like the memories coming through him here of uh he says something here about remembering that what is it? I remember the Athan Maer judging the passage of an hour within minutes. That fellow had not been him, but the memory was his now. Passage on an Athan Maer vessel from Aloralen to Barashta, and a bright-eyed seafolk woman who wept when she refused to follow him ashore. Um, I and I like that. I'm just a gambler. That's how he explains who he is. He's no big damn hero. Um, so, and then there are more.
It's just funny. I love the way Jordan writes, because just that little sequence there
Yeah.
where she says, I will wait and I will remember you. You're a great and good man. And he's like,
Mhm.
I'm just a gambler. Actually had the hairs go up on the back of my neck right there.
Did
Just
you actually expect, okay, this isn't going to go well? Is that why?
no, just from an empathetic standpoint to
Hmm.
how she's feeling, and then how he's probably picking up on that, but he's trying to like
Back
be
to the
Han Solo. Yeah, yeah,
self-deprecation. Yeah.
yeah,
All right. And then 678 is when he gets back up to his and Tylen's room, and oh crap, what are you doing here? Um, yeah, and to your point, amusingly, it has to do with Egwene, and
yeah.
I don't even know that Matt notes that. Of Surath learned that an army had vanished in Mirandi. What army or how an army could vanish, I don't know, but she's decided her return was urgent. Um, blah 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 blah. Letting her words trail off, Tylin glided to him across the carpets and fingered his plain green coat. The trouble with having a pet fox, she murmured, is that sooner or later it remembers it is a fox. Uh, I, I think the kind of the end of their relationship here is just Jordan further, putting a pin in what it really was and where the haters are wrong, because even Thailand understands that this was fun, but it's over now.
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, she always knew it would be eventually, because as the way she puts it, she has made a pet of a wild animal, but you don't really tame a wild animal. It's still always a wild animal, which is, uh, Siegfried and Roy are the biggest example of that. The most
The
egregious example.
biggest example is the grizzly guy.
The grizzly guy, yes. Well,
Yeah,
but those weren't tame. He just thought he could go out in the wild. But for Siegfried and Roy, they had tamed these tigers, but you don't really tame a wild animal. But pets have had literally millennia of domesticity bred into them.
and even then, the quote unquote dangerous breeds of dogs, which
Mhm.
I will argue with both sides of the argument,
Yes, yes.
because there's the, oh, they're all dangerous and they should be euthanized or illegal. That's stupid.
Hmm.
But then there's also the dog moms that don't have children that are like, my pit bull's the sweetest thing on the planet.
There
Yeah,
are no
that thing
bad
also hasn't
animals,
been
only bad
tested.
owners. No,
Yeah,
that's not true either.
that thing also hasn't been tested with a 5-year-old tugging on its ears for 10 minutes and accidentally stepping on its tail. Because I got bit in the face by my pit mix Wallace, the one that passed away a couple years ago, because I went down to hug it on the ground and my knee landed right on its tail, and it turned around and latched on right there. And luckily, I'm an adult and was able to react properly to it. But if I was a child and started fighting back, who knows what would have
Yeah,
happened?
fight back, freak out. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was completely sad and remorseful afterwards, but the reaction is the point.
Mhm.
And if I was 3 years old, that reaction would be permanent disfigurement, if not worse.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that.
Um.
I still think the relationship was slightly problematic in some ways,
Oh
but
no. Yeah. That again, that's where the layers are, because it is definitely problematic. Um. Let's see.
but
Where
the
is it?
alternatives are serving maids that are using him for his coin, or name any other number of
No.
ways that
Here
there's
we
a
go.
one
So
sided
the
relationship.
bottom of page 678 here, after she says, the thing about the fox, suddenly she sees two handfuls of his hair and pulled his head down for a kiss that curled his toes in his boots. That, she said breathlessly when she finally let him go, is to show you how much I will miss you. Without the slightest change of expression, she slapped him so hard that silver flecks floated in front of his eyes. Just FYI, when silver flecks float in front of your eyes and your ears are ringing, you've just had a minor concussion.
I was about to say you're on concussion protocol. Yeah.
That's how hard she slapped him, without the slightest
It was
change of
probably less of a
express.
slap and more of a palm strike
Mm-hmm,
at that
mm-hmm.
point. Yeah.
And that is for trying to sneak away while I was gone. And then again, adding to the layers, turning her back, she pulled her mane of raven hair over one shoulder. Undo my buttons for me, my pretty little fox. We arrived so late, I decided not to wake my maids. But these fingernails make buttons all but impossible. One last night together, and tomorrow I will send you on your way. She's kind of crazy. Where's the crazy hot? I think that needs to be our meme for this episode, the crazy hot chart. Uh, because yep. But again, Matt could have left at any time. Matt could have put his foot down and said, "No, knock it off" at any time. But on some level or levels, he didn't really want to yet. But now he has to, because it's not about him anymore. The plan is already in motion. He's got a Gannon and the Warders and Jolene and Teslin and all these other people who have already started the breakout. They are already screwed if they don't get away from Ibudar and hide from the Sanchin and the Seekers, because that's how they're gonna react here. So it's no longer just about him. He has suffered through the annoying parts of Tylin for a long time now, because he was the only one suffering. Now he doesn't have a choice. And it's I'm going tonight, he said, putting his hand on Tylen's shoulders, and when I do, I'm taking a couple of Aes Sedai from the attic. And then, of course, because he's a sap, come with me. I'll send Talon and Julian to find Beslin. And go with you, she said incredulously, moving away and turning to face him. Her proud face was scornful. Pigeon, I don't fancy becoming your pretty. And this is where she's not an entirely sympathetic character. Okay, because there is a power play that is going on here and has been. Okay, that doesn't mean she's a bad person. That just means she's a person, which is I think why I reflexively disliked a lot of uh the arguments and the Tylin hating on the forums back in the day is the reflexive need to either make her a villain or make her a hero. She's just a person. She's a
You,
very flawed because she's a person.
you used a word earlier, which is complicated. And after having just gone through this little sexual misconduct training, I think that's one of the flaws in these things is they try to simplify something that is super complicated.
Mm-hmm.
They try to make something black and white that is probably the furthest thing from black and white we have in our lives.
Yep. Yep. I mean, just a normal sexual relationship is going to be complicated, but now you add on the age difference, the power difference, the power dynamics, the politics, and now you're having, and this is why Jordan is such a good writer, because he gives you glimpses of all of those complications throughout the this did this start in Lord of Chaos or in Crown of Swords? I can't remember.
Thought it
Crown
was
of
Crown of
Swords, I
Swords.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, is when their sexy time starts. So for, almost two full books here, you have got you have had this relationship, and he has been,
Well, in
building on
defense
it
of
and
that,
giving
he
you
was
hints. And
completely absent from one book in that time.
yeah. So that's why I'm not counting that one, but through most of Crown of Swords and then through basically all of this book, he's building off of that, and he's giving you insight into all of this. And then it amusingly for now ends with him tying her up and her giving him pointers on how to better tie him up, which is, oh boy, giggity, oh no. um so 681 is where things start to get really interesting, because as he leaves her, I'm going to miss you, he said quietly as he pushed her beneath the edge of the bed. To his surprise, he realized that he really would. Light. Hurriedly, he gathered his cloak and gloves and spear and snuffed the lamps on his way out. Women could tangle a man in that maze before he knew it. And then right on top of that, right after that, he runs into Tawan. You down at the bottom of the page. So you are intending to leave. I cannot allow that, toy. With an oath, he spun on his heel and found himself facing Tuan, her dark face stern behind her long, transparent veil. All right, now you got to have thoughts on this scene. Um, I like how his first reaction is to basically nab her and like, stuff her in a closet so she can't raise the alarm. And then he's surprised and annoyed and impressed that he can't like physically manhandle her. Now, granted, a big part of that is his stupid leg is still
Mm-hmm.
jacked up. He's still limping. He still can't move like he used to. Um, uh,
Well, and there's also the surprise element, which is
yes,
something you do teach in self-defense. It's like you're not going to Black Widow this, but at the same time, if they're expecting you to just lie down, then any movement is actually going to help.
yes. All right, so the bottom of 682. After a full page of them going back and forth here, he could not understand why she was not already shouting for help, but he knew she was about to kick at him. Well, not if he had anything to say about it. He leaped for her, and everything happened at once. A stab of pain in his hip sent him to one knee. Tuan snatched her skirts almost to her own hips, and her slim white stocking leg flashed out at him in a kick that passed over his head as she was suddenly hoisted into the air. Um, he thought he might be as surprised to see Noel with his arms wrapped around the girl as she was to have those arms there, but he reacted faster than she as she opened her mouth to shout at last. Now, so I think this is a purposeful blind spot for Matt, and I think it is in with keeping in his. It's interesting that you bring up the comedian and the self-deprecation, because the reason she wasn't shouting for help is because it was Matt. But now some other peasant has grabbed hold of her, and now she's about to shout,
Mm-hmm.
because now it's no longer an amusing game. Whatever game it was that she was playing in her own mind, that's why she wasn't shouting. It's because it was Matt. Also, because we know here in a second, because she's about to step out from the shadows, Seleucia was hanging around to keep an eye on her to make sure that if things went bad, that she was still safe. Um,
You always have this sort of trouble with women.
Always, Matt replied sourly and grunted when a knee caught his aching hip. Oh, that's just rude. No, no, no,
Well, at least it
don't.
was his hip and not what's between the hip
I
bones.
sus I'm wondering if that was a purposeful point on Jordan's part, is a kind of uh side-handed innuendo of that's what she was aiming for. um let's see. I like that Noel is clever enough to figure out. Look, I didn't know if this is what you were planning for, but I figured it might be good to not be known to be one of your friends after tonight. And then Matt feeling guilty of, oh crap, I didn't think about that. I should have included him, or at least given him a hint to leave. Um, uh,
It's a good thing you got all that practice with Tylin tying knots.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, Jordan does comedy in a way that's not Jar Jar Binks.
Yep,
It's
yep, yep,
things that are perfectly reasonable for the situation, but he just mentioned something that happened earlier,
yep.
and then the two together are really funny.
Or even just the simple lowering himself to his knees. He avoided Tuan's kicks, most of them anyway, long enough to catch her legs as he's tying her up. um and then you add on top of that, so and then things slow down, and it's all right, just stash her in a hayloft, someone will find her eventually, she'll be fine, and we'll be long gone. And then Eganin comes in, and it's, oh light, Eganin said hoarsely, sinking to her knees. You madman, it's death by slow torture to lay hands on the daughter of the Nine Moons. The two Soldam gasped and knelt without hesitation, not only pulling the two Aes Sedai down with them, but gripping the Adam right at the collar to force their faces to the floor. Matt is savvy enough to know that this means, because he's been around the Sanshin, he knows the degrees of authority, the degrees of obsequiousness that are demanded based on the rank of the person. And so he should know that for Iganin and the Soldam to act this way, to not just bow, but to put their faces literally on the floor, this is a ludicrously high ranking person. And remember, when he first met her, he was confused because sometimes Suroth acts like she's terrified of her, but Tuan acts like she's an equal or maybe slightly below Suroth. So he doesn't know what's going on. But so this is 686. Matt grunted as though Tuan had just kicked him square in the belly. He felt as if she had. The daughter of the Nine Moons. The Aelfin had told him truth, much as he hated knowing. He would die and live again if he had not already. He would give up half the light of the world to save the world, and he did not even want to think about what that meant. He would marry. She is my wife, he said softly. Somebody made a choking sound. He thought it was Doman. So the whole scene is absurd and comical, and one of the layers of that is that what flabbergasted Matt isn't the, oh crap, I just laid hands on someone who it is slow torture to touch, and these people are burying their faces in the floor because she's so high ranking. No. What kicks Matt in the gut is the title Daughter of the Nine Moons, and crap, I've got to marry this girl. Which, again, setup and payoff with the things we were bitching about on Wednesday was so much of what they didn't set up. They had these scenes that were clearly something that they wanted to be impactful, but you hadn't bothered to set it up. They have been setting up the Daughter of the the Daughter of the Nine Moons since, well, you get her through the doorway, but Jordan really starts to set it up, you know, firmly with the next book, with Fires of Heaven. And I'm brain farting on his chick's name. Begins with an M. Melindra. And like, so I think she's the first one he does this with, and then he starts to do it repeatedly of, does Daughter of the Nine Moons mean anything to you? Because as much as he's enjoying his time with Melindra, he doesn't want to be tied down. And then when Seleucia does come in, it just adds to the absurdity with Matt trying to calm her down, and he doesn't understand, why is she suddenly looking with consternation? This doesn't make sense of how she's acting the way she's acting. And then so then the end of the chapter, Noel says, I suppose you mean to leave them both in the hayloft. No, Matt replied, looking at Tuan. She stared right back, still with no expression he could read. Which again, remember, we just saw him with the Ganon and how he read that scene and read her. And now, complete poker face. A boy, slim little woman, when he liked women with flesh on their bones, heir to the Sanshin throne, when noble women gave him goosebumps. A woman who had wanted to buy him and now likely wanted to put a knife in his ribs. And she would be his wife. The Aelfin always gave true answers. We are taking them with us, he said. At last, Tuan showed expression. She smiled, as if she suddenly knew a secret. She smiled, and he shivered. Oh, light how he shivered.
And to show how much they hate the fans, Tuan played by Elliot Page.
Oh! That's not funny, because I can see that happening. All right, let's pause there and then get into any spoilers and final thoughts. All right, so no comments. from previous videos, and I didn't have a ton of spoiler thought, but there was go away if you haven't read these seriously. Majors, even though it's actually coming up here in a couple of chapters. I really thought we'd get through the rest of the book. I don't know why I thought that, because even these couple of chapters, there's so much going on, and it's Matt, so we got to take our time with it because it's lots of fun. And it's I mean it's a massive payoff, 5 books in the making.
Mm-hmm.
What just happened here. Um, and one of the things I was trying to do as we were building, through this book is to, you know, take some time with the Tuan interactions because they're very small, they're very short on purpose because this isn't someone who's important to Matt. This is someone who's an extra unwanted detail, a wrinkle in his already complicated life that he now has to deal with. We know because of the way Jordan introduced her that okay, this is someone important. Well, and because in that opening scene where you see her on the ship, we know she's the daughter of the Nine Moons. We know that, so we know this is a big effing deal. Matt has no clue. So on purpose, those interactions are very brief, uh, because it wouldn't make sense otherwise in the world. And what Jordan does is he writes in the world, but all of those little interactions are building on each other to get us to the very unorthodox and bizarre courtship that he has with her in Crossroads and Knife of Dreams.
Yeah, since we're in spoiler section, if I remember correctly, didn't aren't they already technically married since he said she's my wife 3 times?
She has to also say,
Oh, okay. That was the other thing. I
and
forgot what the second detail was to it. Yeah.
that to me is one of the funniest and most awesome fan theories ever. Because after this, there's a couple years between each book, and after this book came out, I don't remember who first came up with the theory that they're already married, and it's based off of a political arranged marriages in the past that you would have marriage ceremonies where the bride and groom weren't there because that would be that would be some ceremony that came later, but legally and politically all that was required was that you affirm and take these oaths and that there are witnesses to it, because you couldn't necessarily wait for the bride and groom to be together because this was a political thing. It needed to be done now. And so someone pointed out this and said, what if he's already started the marriage ceremony simply by declaring that she's his wife? And then lo and behold, 2 books later, oh crap, that's what happens.
Oh.
Yeah. So and even the way he says it is that he says it, she is my wife, she's my bloody wife is the third time thing she says, and then she mirrors that language, which is extra amusing. Um, but the other thing I was kind of tiptoeing around because I wasn't sure if we get there, because it is the very end of the book is when Tylin is killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I there's several reasons that Jordan does just about anything in this series, and one of the reasons to kill Tylin off is to one to on a kind of more practical, tangible level is to elevate Beslin, because he's going to be more of a character going forward in a minor way, but he's going to you know, have his moments there in how he decides. You just saw kind of the last time you saw him is him griping about his mom saying we're mice and we have to
Mm-hmm.
hide, and him hating that. And now all of a sudden he's the one in charge. And now he kind of has to live with the idea that my mother was right and she's dead, brutally murdered, and I'll never be able to tell her that she was right.
Mm-hmm.
But then also the putting that final layer on this very complicated relationship between Tylin and Matt, that it really tears him up, and he feels very personally guilty because he's the one that tied her up and left her there under that bed for the golem to find.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what anyone else says that, you didn't do it. Yes, I did. I'm the one who did that.
Well, and there's also the other part that not just her being tied up and left there, because had she not been tied up, the golem would have still killed her. I mean,
Exactly.
it's like one of the most badass things
Yeah.
in the entire universe. So it's the fact that he wasn't there. I think that's more the point than I
Hmm.
tied her
Hmm.
up. I wasn't there to protect her because I'm the only man who knows how to fight this thing, by the way.
One of the few people in the entire world that knows what it is in the
Yeah.
first place.
Yeah. I mean, even the Forsaken don't know how to kill it. He does. The Forsaken don't. They just know that it has to listen to them.
Hmm.
So he's probably the only person in this planet that knows how to kill the thing.
Yeah. And again, almost nothing is on accident here. Their final interaction was that very bizarre, almost schizophrenic interaction of, let me grab you by the hair and kiss you so hard it curls your toes in your boots, and I'm going to slap you so hard I give you a concussion, and then I'm going to say, undress me, honey, and let's get busy. We have one last night together. That was their their last interaction, was this very schizophrenic, but then that's where it ends, and it ends nastily and badly, with her murder in very gruesome way, because he has been setting up for a while now before we actually saw the golem. But when he first teased the golem, when it killed I just brain farted on his name.
Herod
Fell.
fell. Yeah.
Herod fell. Yeah, that this is a very nasty creature. Yeah. So that was all I had on the thoughts there. Um
Uh,
I
the other spoilers I had written down is we'd hinted at Noel's real identity and
uh,
Satel Anand's
yeah.
identities going forward.
Um I think by this point there's enough to suspect that, and I recall having this thought and reading plenty of people also saying this is Jane Farstrider, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main clue is one, how traveled he is, but then also I think there's a one of the few bits we get about Jane Farstrider early is that he fights with two swords, and Noel has the two daggers. And then he has this thought at one point, I think before you actually know that it's Noel, of like his hands are all messed up. He's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
old and arthritic, and so he kind of, his mind is all messed up, but he seems to remember being able to do more. But now he can just handle these two daggers because he can't wield a sword anymore, because he doesn't have the strength, he doesn't have the grip. Uh, Stalinon's uh a little more obscure, and I can't remember the name. That she is supposed to be someone who was burnt out and
Mm-hmm.
left the tower. And it is the I believe she is the last person to make a serious study of ter'angreal, is I think who it is. I would have to look up to double check if that's, because there's a couple different references to people who were burnt out and left the tower because they didn't like to be around the reminder of what they used to be. And Satal Anan is clearly someone who knows Aes Sedai and knows the tower and knows how those things work.
She makes doesn't she talk to Matt at some point and tell him that she used to be part of the tower?
I see, that's why I was kind of beating around the bush, because I feel like in Knife of Dreams they have a conversation that makes it as clear as Jordan usually makes things of that she came from the tower, that she used to be Aes Sedai.
Let's look at the big book of cheats here. Is it SAT?
Setalle. Anan is the last name. Um,
Ser, lots of SERs. SE. Oh, there's a whole page on her in this thing.
wow.
She arrived in Ibudar about a half a year after being burnt out. She thought that perhaps it was knowledge of the kin that drew her to Ibudar. Let's see. So what happened for that? She was once the Aes Sedai Martina Janata, but was burned out while working with Turing Grail. Yeah, so you're right. Her description of the pain of being burnt out was that if she gathered the birth pangs she suffered with all of her children together into one moment, and that would be the 10th of what she felt. So yeah, that I think that was a conversation she has with Matt coming up.
Oh, I forgot about this. That there's a clue to who she is before you meet her, which is that Byre, Mullane, and Amos had dreamt of the finding of the Bowl of the Winds and told Avienda about it. All three Dreamwalkers had this dream, which makes it especially significant. Rain coming from a bowl. There are snares and pitfalls around the bowl. If the right hand picks it up, they will find a treasure perhaps as great as the bowl. In the wrong hands, the world is doomed. The key to finding the bowl is to find the one who is no longer,
Mm.
was the dream. And the no longer is no longer Aes Sedai. So yeah, that was, I forgot about that clue even before you really meet her. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot about here, including her meeting of Jasper
Mm-hmm.
and why he means so much to her. Apparently, he found her in the rain, and she hadn't eaten for days, and he
I think
force
that may
fed
be
her.
the conversation you're thinking of.
Yeah.
I think she relates that to Matt in Knife of Dreams, and that's where it basically confirms who she was. Is I think she tells that to Matt.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that and see how much of it is actually in the books and how much of it came later in the form of post hoc uh,
Mm-hmm.
information.
I find her really interesting because the as a character, the way she is as Satalanan, I have a hard time envisioning that's who she was when she was an Aes Sedai of the Brown Hajah,
Mm-hmm.
because she doesn't act very brown.
No, no.
Um,
Well,
but you
but it does seem that her experience of overcoming the burning out
mhm,
was what set her in the path she's on, not the experience that she had when she had the power available to
exactly.
her.
And this current personality, the who she is now, is why she's still alive, given what usually happens to people who are gentled or stilled or burnt out.
Now here's the question, the meta question. If the kin and the Aes Sedai are right, that was it Varen or Cadswin that has the thought that because Aes Sedai aren't having babies is one reason we're seeing less and less of the power.
Mm-hmm.
Satel Anan was genetically born with the power, but she burnt out and she had
Mm-hmm.
8 children. What are the odds that those 8 children might have some affinity to the power?
Yeah, I feel like she would have said, there would have been a comment about if she had a daughter that went to the tower, and it's never said. So I do feel like that's a bit of a plot hole of, you had 8 children. Surely one of them should have been. But
Well,
then again, the
they're not
spark
all.
is very rare. So
Yeah.
if there wasn't anyone to kind of figure out that they could learn, and that's something that's very fuzzy that Jordan doesn't go into a lot. I think you get a little more with the men because they take a very proactive role in going out and trying to find men who can channel, of figuring out how they learn, and we don't know how the Aes Sedai do it, or even if they do, if they go out looking for girls who can learn, which I think is one of the criticisms very early on in like the Great Hunt, when we're first in the tower is it's not just that there are fewer and fewer girls who are born with the ability because we're culling humanity, but it sounds to me like the tower is very passive.
Mm-hmm.
They just wait for girls to come to them.
Yeah, and they reject the ones from poor backgrounds. So the show tells me.
Ugh.
Way to ruin fucking everything, Rafe.
All right. Well,
And
speaking of the
Amazon.
show, the last episode of season 2 is out now, and we
Yeah,
can
that
hope and pray that it is the last episode ever, but we can't
no,
have
no, they were
nice.
approved for season three before season two even came out.
All right.
So, but they were probably going by season one numbers, and you said it dropped by half going to season two. So
Yeah.
whether that affects anything or not, I don't know. But
Oh well, we'll see, and we'll get to talk about that awfulness next time.
yeah,
But
I'm
for
gonna eat
now, we
something
end
and
on
I'm
a
gonna
high
watch
note.
it right now. So
For now, we end on a high note, and that is Matt and Tuan finally, Matt and the daughter of the Nine Moons finally getting together.
yeah, but Matt gets high in the last episode. So
Ah,
yeah, we need the effect of the doorways, but we don't want to do the doorways. What do we got? And somebody in the room goes, shrooms, man. I could see Ian Crossland in there going, man, you need some psychedelics.
but it was like someone who either had had a bad trip or someone who hadn't actually been on a trip, and this was their idea of what going on a trip was like.
Well, so predictions, and this would actually be a good plot tool if they have this thought, which I don't trust them to have. That trip was uh so what we do know about psychedelics is the person taking you through your trip is really important.
Mm,
And Ishii is the one that put this thing together, right?
that's a good
And
point.
he also wants Matt for his own, right? So he could have made him see what he wanted to see by putting him in a dream state and using his powers in the dream state to make him see these things. And so the whole you're evil all the way through might have been an Ishii construct. And
Yeah,
we might have somebody coming through. Maybe it's our introduction to dreamwalkers later. Maybe we actually get the doorways. Maybe it's just someone like Varen or Moiraine having some
yeah.
insight, or Lan having the insight on everything tower related as he's had in the last couple episodes. Uh, but saying, "Oh, well, this is how they do things. This is how they manipulate people," and that's the start of Matt becoming the Matt we
Yeah.
know and love. That's
Well,
very optimistic thinking, and I don't
yeah,
trust them to
it's
that.
very
But
optimistic because I don't think they're that deep of a thinkers.
if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who's on the writing staff, please throw that in there. Throw those ideas, because that, yeah, I'm not a writer for a reason, but at the same time, even us normies can have a good idea, especially when it's dealing with a subject that we all know and love very well. So how I could make it fit into a complete story, I wouldn't know, but the writer can figure that out. But here's the good idea for you.
I just had a thought because again, the point of this reread was was the after the awfulness that was season 1 of, you know what? We should go through because I had already started rereading it just for fun. I'd already started rereading the series, and we should go through the book series to show why is it so popular? Why does it work so well? As a stark contrast for why this doesn't work. And you can have all the good ideas you want, but how many things have we talked about here in book 9 that were set up in book 1? We just spent a lot of time talking about Matt, and so much of who Matt is was set up when we first meet him. I did one of the thoughts I had, and I didn't say this out loud because uh you had your own thoughts, and I don't even remember where we were, but talking about Matt's spirit of adventure. Oh, it's with Tylin, and then the knife in the bedpost, and the one of the reasons he's still there is because however wrong it is based on his own raising and personal ideas and preconceived notions of what a relationship is supposed to be. This is wrong, but it's fun. And what is Matt? He's fun. He is an adventurer. Remember, one of the first things we see him do is go sneak up into an attic and throw a sling a stone at something to knock these barrels down and knock mud onto these white cloaks to take them down a peg. He's playing a. I mean, even before that, we had the badger. He'd caught a
The
badger and he
badger.
wanted to release it. He's a prankster. He
Well,
wants to have
he
fun. He
covered it
wants
in
to have an
flour and released
adventure.
it. It's
Yes. No, no, that wasn't the badger. That was the hounds, because
oh
he had
yeah.
convinced someone that the last hunt was upon them and the ghost hounds were out. Exactly. But why is he a prankster? It's not because he's like, one of these, kind of cruel pranksters who wants to screw with people. He wants to have fun. He wants to have an adventure. And what is Tylin? Tylin is a doozy of an adventure. That's
Mhm.
one of the reasons he's there, and he's not going anywhere until he has to. It's because this is an adventure. That's set up from the very beginning. We haven't set up much in this series, and what has been set up is pretty damn awful.
Well, even let's look at Tuan. So any normal person without that streak in them would have said, "Oh, I went through this doorway. They prophesied this. You are this person, and I have every reason to leave you in a haystack right now." But I kind of want to see where this goes.
But the elfin always speak true, so
Uh,
let's see what happens.
yeah, because realistically, the practical person would have been like, "Well, if it's going to happen in the future, the elfin always speak true." But right now, this person needs to be in a haystack.
But yeah, no, that's a good point, because as I was saying, all of those interactions he has with Tawan are all very small because he doesn't know that she's important, and she has uh an inkling of an idea that he might be important, because of something that happened early on when she asked if, or wait, did this happen or is it about to happen? When does she ask if he remembers the face of Hawkwing? Did that happen in this book? And I forgot, we didn't point it out, or does that happen in Crossroads?
I think it happens in Crossroads.
I think it happens in Crossroads.
Yeah.
You're right. But for whatever reason, oh, the signet ring and the staff, those are signs to her based on their idea of omens that he is someone important. He is someone I need to keep an eye on. So he's he's an interesting mystery to her. But for us, the reader, this is a much deeper mystery because this has been set up 5 books ago. All right. Well, I guess we got to stop procrastinating on the good stuff and just go ahead and suck it up and bend over and watch the last episode. And so we'll do that, and we will see y'all next time with the finale of the good stuff, which is I can't remember, it's Rand and a couple of, I think it's mostly Rand. I can't remember if there's any other stuff in here.
Yeah, it pretty much
Uh
always ends with Rand,
with
which makes sense because Nynaeve is not the dragon, nor is Egwene, nor is Matt, nor is Perrin.
They can't give that up. I forgot to point that out. It was so damn annoying. Is when in the meeting with Sawan, when she says it would have been so much easier
Easier
if
if
you were
this
a
was a
woman.
girl. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
It would have been so much easier for you, Swan, but guess what? The world would have been destroyed. That's the difference. Because there would have been no man to stand up to the evil.
There's a lot to say about that, about how the men were necessary for fighting the war that bookends this age, the third age, the age of legend, the end of the age of legends, and the last battle at the end of this age. But the women were necessary to hold society together to get there, to get from here to there. But you can't talk about that because men and women are interchangeable. I hate this show so much. All right, but we love you.
One more to get through. Yes,
we love you, the audience of one. Thank you, Scott, for sticking around, and
we've got 57 subscribers.
Whatever.
One of them is me, but it's I'm pretty sure my mom is a subscriber.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. And I think your brother is, even though he uses a fake name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you watch the whole thing through, I know it's you, Mister. This is not my name. Is your username?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see y'all next time.
All right, see you later.